All right, let's get right into a story that is no joke, one of the greatest career pivots in music history. It's a story all about genius, about rejection, and, how getting fired from what you think is your dream job can actually be the best thing that ever happens to you.
But it all really starts with this one central question. Just think about it for a second. Why would a true genius fire the exact people who seem to understand his vision better than anyone else? It doesn't make sense, right? Well, let's unpack this.
So, let's meet our main characters, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. Now, back in the early 80s, these guys were crucial members of The Time, which, as you probably know, was the band created and totally masterminded by Prince. They were in the inner circle, living the dream, until a freak blizzard and one single phone call just changed everything, forever.
And listen to how fast this all went down. So it's 1983, they're on tour with The Time, and they land in Atlanta. A monster blizzard hits and grounds every single flight. So what do you do with the downtime? Jam and Lewis figure, hey, let's be productive. They sneak into a studio to produce a track for another group, the SOS Band. The problem? The blizzard clears too late. They can't get to the next gig in San Antonio. And Prince, well, he doesn't hesitate. He fires them. Over the phone. Just like that, it was over.
They might be wondering, why so harsh? Why not just a fine or a warning? Well, to get that, you have to understand the universe they were living in. This wasn't just any band. This was Prince's world, and playing in it came with a very, very high price.
People have literally called it the Prince prison. See, Prince was this once-in-a-generation genius, but he demanded absolute total control. He wasn't really looking for collaborators. He wanted disciples who would execute his vision to perfection. So the minute Jam and Lewis showed they were autonomous artists by producing for someone else, they broke the #1 rule. They weren't just bandmates, they were supposed to be followers.
In this firing, it forced this fundamental shift. I mean, look at the difference here. With Prince, their role was to be a disciple. Their output was Prince's funk, and their status, they were living in his shadow. But after he fired them, suddenly they became the architects. They weren't just making Prince's sound, they were creating the Minneapolis sound. And they went from being shadows to being the true kings of the board.
And that right there, that brings us to the real paradox of this whole story. The moment that should have been a career-ending disaster was actually their ticket to liberation. They were literally fired directly into freedom.
So, how on earth could this public firing, this total humiliation in front of the entire music industry, actually turn out to be a gift? It's because Prince's rejection was the cold start. The shock to the system they desperately needed. Think about it. As long as they were in his orbit, they would only ever be an extension of his genius. Getting kicked out, as painful as it was, forced them to stand on their own 2 feet and figure out what their sound, their own identity, really was.
And oh, did they figure it out. They didn't just find their footing. They took everything they had learned and they built an absolute empire, moving straight from the shadow of a king to claiming their very own throne.
So, here's the playbook. First, remember that SOS Band track that got fired over? Just Be Good to Me? It becomes a massive hit. That success makes them realize, wait a minute, our real power isn't on stage, it's behind the scenes as producers. Then they meet a young Janet Jackson, an artist trying to get out from under the shadow of her famous family. And here's the magic move. Instead of dictating to her like Prince did to them, they listened. And from that partnership came the legendary, culture-shifting album, Control.
And the result of that freedom, of becoming their own architects, get ready for this number. Over 100 Billboard Top 10 hits. Just let that sink in for a second. The scale of what they accomplished is it's staggering. It's a legacy written right there on the charts.
So, we come to the big takeaway here. Their story is really the ultimate example of finding freedom in the fire. It is a legacy that was born from what looked like Prince's biggest mistake. So what was the secret sauce? What's the real success factor? It's this critical shift in who you are. They went from being performers, brilliantly executing somebody else's vision, to becoming architects, designing the entire blueprint themselves, not just for their own careers, but for the future of pop music. And what a blueprint it was. I mean, look at this. 5 Grammys, those 100+ top 10 hits. They became the undisputed architects of the Minneapolis sound. They literally created the blueprint for what modern pop and R&B would become. And in the end, they proved without a shadow of a doubt that one person's biggest mistake can become another person's greatest opportunity.
When you really boil it all down, their story leaves us with this one powerful idea. Your value isn't tied to your boss. It's not determined by the person who signs your paycheck. Your real value is determined by that vision that you have inside you, and your refusal to let anyone or anything kill it.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought. And this one's for you to think about. In your own life, your own career, whose rejection might actually be your greatest opportunity, just waiting for you to grab it?